Hello, Nashville. I am Beau Beach. This is the Free Speech Podcast presented by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, the best commercial real estate brokerage in Nashville. If you are an owner of a commercial property who is considering selling, that wants to receive the absolute highest price the market will pay, check out soldbybeechwood.com for all your commercial real estate brokerage needs. Hint, I am also the owner of that company. Now, let's get into the 10 stories that we've got for you this week. I'm going to give you a quick update on each of the stories we're going to cover, and then we're going to get into them. We've hand-selected these stories because they're interesting, they're informative. I think you'll like what we have to share with you today. First on our list, a Las Vegas venue to open downtown on 2nd Avenue, a very, very unique use. I'm not a big bar restaurant guy. I don't bring you that kind of content very often, but the use they have planned for this location is very, very cool. So I'm going to bring you that story. Nashville was not selected for the newest women's professional soccer team, and the reason for that is very lame. I'm going to share that with you. Next, the national office vacancy rate hits a 45-year high. That is a big deal. I'm going to share with you my thoughts, and then we'll compare what's happening nationally to what's happening in Nashville. Next, what is the most competitive type of restaurant to own in Nashville? Where are you going to have the most competition if you were crazy enough to get into the restaurant business? I'm going to share that with you, and I'll also tell you the area that has the least amount of competition, right? Next, we've got a new music venue coming to WeHo. I'm going to quickly tell you that story. Anytime there's a new music venue coming to town, I think that's a very creative use, and I like to tell you about it. So I'm going to bring you up to date on the WeHo music venue. Next, say goodbye to Johnny Cash's Bar, which is located downtown on 3rd Avenue. It is getting replaced, and it's not getting replaced with another celebrity branded bar. I will tell you that story. Advance Auto Parts is closing 700 locations. You know, Advance Auto Parts is a big user of retail real estate throughout the country. It's one of those brands that is often signing sale leasebacks. Those properties are marketed at a price that is a function of their sale price. So anytime you've got a large user of triple net leased real estate in the country closing stores, that's a big deal, and I'm going to bring you that story. State officials pressure Tennessee State to sell prime downtown campus. I'm going to bring you up to date on all of the financial issues that Tennessee State is having right now, and you may not even be aware they also have a downtown campus. I'm going to tell you that story. A high-profile $165 million development in Franklin is finally announced. The developer has been assembling very high-priced parcels in Franklin for a number of years. They finally announced what their plans are. I'm going to tell you that story. And lastly, a new banking business plan comes out of Nashville. An entrepreneurial bank who is taking on the banking system in a very unique way. I'm going to tell you that story. Those are the 10 stories we've got for you today. Let's get into it. A Las Vegas venue to open on 2nd Avenue. In February, Las Vegas-based Play Playground will open a 15,000 square feet entertainment venue at 128 2nd Avenue North. This is the same building that houses Nashville Live, which is very interesting. So very similar uses right next to each other downtown. You know, obviously Broadway is known for music and getting really, really drunk if you are a tourist. Now we're getting some different and more interesting entertainment venues into that mix. This location is where everyone can experience the power of play. They say there's no VR, AR, or arcade games. Our guests feel like they've been dropped into a game show, which I think is very cool. Playground is all about laughing, high-fiving, and playing like a kid again. Ooh, I like the sound of this. The space will have more than 20 large-scale experiences and games for guests to participate in, from team challenges and word puzzles to physical games. There will be VIP spaces, live music, and DJs. A rooftop space, which can be reserved for private events and parties, looks over the Cumberland River and Nissan Stadium. So, a 15,000 square foot entertainment venue for adults to play game show like games, laughing, high-fiving, and playing like a kid again. I think a lot of adults could use that, especially if we can do that without getting really drunk at the same time. But I'm a little bit biased. I haven't had a drink in 9 years, and I don't regret that decision, but it makes going to Broadway a difficult thing to do, right? So if you don't have your beer goggles on Broadway, it looks a whole lot different, and it looks crazy. It looks dangerous. You've got out-of-towners coming in and drinking so much they have no idea what they're doing. You've got homeless people scattered about. Broadway is not a real welcoming place, in my opinion, unless you're really drunk and you're visiting from somewhere else. So I love the idea of an adult entertainment center downtown. Very cool. I hope to get the chance to check it out one day when it lines up. Next, Nashville threw its hat in the ring for the newest women's professional soccer team and just got slapped down. The reason given, really ridiculous. I don't know if they're just being disingenuous on the reason, but let me tell you the story. Nashville will not be getting the National Women's Soccer League's 16th team. NWSL commissioner identified Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Denver as the list of possible cities debuting a team in 2026, alongside recently awarded Boston Nation FC. So somehow Nashville loses out to Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Denver. You could argue that Denver is a market that could compete with Nashville. You could not argue that Cincinnati and Cleveland are comparable marketplaces. Nashville's second attempt at a new soccer franchise. So we've swung and missed twice already. The league cited scheduling as a concern with awarding Nashville an expansion team. Despite identifying 20 dates a potential new team could play at Geodis Park, which is much more than the league's required 14. Also, they identified practice facilities in Murfreesboro, and the mayor is on board. So they say scheduling was the reason that they were not selected, even though they only play 14 games and 20 different dates at Geodis Park was recommended. So I don't buy the reason they didn't choose Nashville. Perhaps the group that is targeting the team just isn't real impressive or trustworthy. I would probably say that's more likely the case. Maybe we need to get some more professional, heavy hitter business people involved if we're really going to secure a women's franchise for soccer in Nashville, which I think would be awesome. I've got 2 high-level soccer players, my daughters. We would love to go to games like that. So we're a little bit bummed about it, but I think the most interesting part of the story is the nonsense reason that was given. Now let's keep moving. The national office vacancy rate hits a 45-year high. Commercial real estate insiders predict 1/4 of all existing American office space could be vacant in 2026. Currently, 11 major metros have at least $1 billion worth of empty space. And what they're saying there is if they were receiving rent on that space, it would add up to $1 billion in each of those markets. Locally here in Nashville, 8.4 million square feet of office space was vacant with an expected lost rent value of $285 million per year. So that's much different than these 11 other markets that got $1 billion going unearned. Music City appears to be faring better than many of its peers, including Atlanta with 39 million square feet vacant, Austin 18 million square feet vacant, and Charlotte 14 million square feet vacant. Again, we've only got 8 million square feet vacant here in Nashville. Though leasing activity was sluggish in Nashville compared to last year's third quarter, demand remains high, with new-to-market tenants currently looking for more than 800,000 square feet of office space in the market. And that's the key. You know, the office business is really about new-to-market tenants. You do not want to be in one of these markets that's in a downward trend whereby all of the office landlords are chasing the same local tenants, you know, where these tenants are just playing a game of musical chairs and you're competing with the building next door, and it's kind of a race to the bottom, right? You know, before I moved to Nashville many years ago, I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and that is the market there, right? So that's a market that its best years are behind it, right? They've got more office space than they need. So all of those poor office landlords are all trying to poach tenants from one another, and it is a race to the bottom. The key is having new to market tenants, which we absolutely have in Nashville, that is saving our butt. 800,000 square feet in the pipeline, new to market tenants. That's a big deal. And Nashville outpaces Atlanta, Charlotte, and Dallas for direct asking rent, meaning we're charging more. So we've got less vacancy and we're charging more. Our average asking rent, almost $37 per square foot, which adds up really fast. If you haven't leased office space before, if you've never written a check for an office lease, you realize how fast $37 per square foot adds up. Just take an average office space of 2,500 square feet and multiply that by $37 rather. So 2,500 times $37 divided by 12, and that's going to give you what you're writing just for your office rent here in Nashville. So we've got a real problem nationally in the office business. We do not have any of those problems here in Nashville, thankfully. Next, what is the most competitive type of restaurant to own in Nashville, right? So if you're a lunatic that wants to get into the restaurant business, right? The most difficult business on planet Earth. What type of business would be most competitive? Or you could have to really battle with the most competitors. Restaurateurs have been forced to navigate a labor shortage, soaring inflation, and shifting consumer habits. In some segments of the restaurant space, there's another dynamic at work, an increasingly crowded marketplace. In Nashville, drum roll please, barbecue is the most competitive restaurant concept. The least competitive, Chinese, right? So if you want to go up against the most competition you possibly can, open a barbecue business. If you want to have a better chance of success and try to compete where there's less competition, Chinese is the move. And that makes sense to me because it's very difficult to find good Chinese in Williamson County. I won't speak to Nashville. I don't get to Nashville on pleasure very often, only work. And when we do eat out, we're in Williamson County. And I'll tell you, the Chinese is difficult in Williamson County. It's probably true of Nashville as well. Steakhouses were identified as the most competitive sector of the industry in the nation due to heavy market saturation. So barbecue is the most saturated in Nashville. Nationally, steakhouses, the most saturated sector. One hot concept that is on the rise but hasn't reached a saturation point in many markets is Korean cuisine. Quote, Korean fried chicken is what everybody wants right now. And I'll tell you, I don't think I've ever had Korean fried chicken, but after I read that, I did a little research, and on our short list, there's a few Korean fried chicken spots in Williamson County, and we are going to check them out because I think that sounds very tasty. So I'll keep you posted on that. Next, AJ Capital Partners is starting work on the next phase of its massive Wedgwood Houston project. The firm is breaking ground on a new music venue and office building. The more interesting aspect is obviously the music venue. The music venue will rise at 440 Chestnut Street and offer 4,500 seats. That's a lot of seats. That's a lot of folks. So that is a real legit music venue in the heart of WeHo. As more information comes out on that, we will keep you updated. But I think that is a very, very cool use. And I think you're going to be hearing about a lot of shows being scheduled in WeHo. 4,500 seats is a nice in-between venue. It's not a small show. It's not a stadium. I think that's probably a venue size that could be really enjoyable for the crowd. And a lot of the local artists could sell enough tickets to make it pencil out. So very cool. You know, we're talking about a lot of bar and restaurant stuff today, which isn't really my style, but here we go. Let's keep going. Say goodbye to Johnny Cash's Bar, which is located on 3rd Avenue. Admittedly, I'd never been there. It's owned and operated by a group called Icon Entertainment and Hospitality, which is one of the bigger, badder operators of high-end bar restaurants downtown. Icon will close Johnny Cash's Bar and BBQ, don't love that name, to make way for an experiential bar and live music venue now to be known as Show Pony. Quote, the typical profile of the Nashville tourist has really evolved, especially rapidly over the past few years. When we opened Johnny Cash's Bar and BBQ, it was geared towards families, and families have lessened in terms of people who engage in food and beverage. We are going to pivot to a new non-celebrity branded value, which will cater more to the tourist who comes to Nashville to enjoy nightlife. Show Pony is working with the Nashville Cabaret to bring a first-of-its-kind entertainment to Broadway. Johnny Cash's Bar and BBQ opened in 2019, so it's not that old, next to the Johnny Cash Museum. The museum is undergoing an expansion and will open a new wing by late second quarter of next year. So Johnny Cash's Museum stays. Johnny Cash's Bar and BBQ is out to be replaced with Show Pony, who is going to have some type of experience involving the Nashville Cabaret. So that is interesting. I also think it's interesting that we're recognizing that families are not going downtown. I would never bring my kids downtown. It just doesn't seem to be a safe place for women and children, in my opinion. You know, anytime people are getting so drunk that they can barely stand up, you know, that is not a place for women and children. Next, Advanced Auto Parts is closing 700 locations. This is a big deal from a commercial real estate perspective. It's slashing more store fleet, 700 locations, and shutting 4 distribution centers, adding to this year's pile of retail closings that are starting to inch toward the COVID-19 scamdemic's peak in 2020. Auto parts retailer unveiled its dramatic restructuring and store optimization strategy. Store optimization. Advance Auto said it plans to close 523 corporate stores and 204 independent locations, right? So it's like a franchise location. With the move, the retailer will exit the entire West Coast to increase its store concentration in its strongest markets. As of October, Advance Auto had 4,781 total stores. Again, 700 now being closed primarily on the West Coast. Quote, we made the decision to close certain non-performing, non-strategic stores to better position our asset base for long-term sustainable growth. The company plans to consolidate 38 distribution centers and operate 13 large facilities by 2026. So 13 smaller distribution centers being consolidated into 13 larger facilities. Announced U.S. store closings so far this year have surpassed any full year since the height of the COVID scamdemic in 2020. So it has been a really rough year for retail store closings 2024. You have to go all the way back to 2020 to find a year that was more difficult. You've got a lot of retailers that are barely hanging on right now. And if you've been listening to the podcast for any period of time, we've been updating you on those failing retailers. It does tell a real important story for the retail commercial real estate market. Luckily, there are many retailers that are willing to backfill those spaces that are doing much well. So I think it's kind of a natural process for the weaker retailers to fall away and the stronger, financially stronger retailers to backfill those spaces. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but nevertheless, the life cycle of commercial retail real estate continues. State officials pressure TSU, Tennessee State University, to sell a prime downtown campus. I think this is interesting because y'all probably don't even know Tennessee State has a campus downtown. You know, downtown real estate in Nashville is very, very valuable. Yeah. As Tennessee State University faces mounting financial troubles, the state is pressuring the university to sell its downtown campus. Financial decisions in recent years have put the institution in a crippled position, the interim president Ronald Johnson said. The legacy of that poor decision making and lack of checks and balances is going to be with us for some time. So what they're saying is Tennessee State is going to be struggling for some time because of past financial mismanagement. To make matters worse, the university's enrollment saw a significant decline this year, dropping 1,000 students down to the 6,300 students that started this semester. 1,000 students just didn't come back to the university. You know, I think you can make a real argument today that college, no matter what college you choose, doesn't pencil out. The costs and the benefits do not weigh out. You take the debt that this kid is going in, you add that to all of the income they could have made over that 4 or 5 or 6 years that they're out partying and pretending to go to class and learn things, and you've got this huge number. I don't think for most people, there's exceptions, right? So any type of role that requires a college degree to even be considered, the big examples are like dentists, doctors, optometrists, those types of things. You don't have a choice, right? If that's what you want to do, good for you. You've got a lot of college ahead of you. But if you're someone that doesn't know that they absolutely need a degree to get the job that they want, I think it more than any time in my life, now is the worst time to be investing in a college education. So many of these kids are getting these degrees and realizing they didn't even need them to get the jobs they're ultimately getting. I think something I'd like to hear about so this is the Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury, right? So this is someone at the state level. Quote, I think something I'd like to hear about in December is consideration of the sale of the Avon Williams property. That's what they call their downtown campus. That is extensive property in the heart of downtown Nashville, and it is very, very valuable property. The Avon Williams campus is prime downtown Nashville property sitting near Nashville Yards and multiple Tony Giartana's projects. TSU's main campus is a 500-acre site in North Nashville. The downtown property, located at 330 10th Avenue North, spans more than 5 acres. 5 acres downtown is very valuable. They're right. Tony Giartana owns a small property adjacent to the campus where he is planning a 33-story tower. Giartana paid $4.9 million for that property in August 2022. That Avon Williams campus has a chain link fence around it, and it is in decrepit situation, right? So this is a campus downtown, 5 acres of very valuable land that's got a chain link fence around it because it's falling apart. It's not usable, that no one has the money to bring it back to life. This is just our government at work, right? As they complain that they don't have enough money, as they complain that they're losing their students, they've got this very, very valuable asset downtown that's just falling into disrepair, that they aren't even considering converting into cash to solve some of their other problems. We need to get folks in government that have a more entrepreneurial, business-minded approach to these things, and you'd have far fewer problems. The days of the government just bailing out these poorly managed institutions, I hope, is over. We've got 2 more stories for you. High-profile $165 million development in Franklin is finally announced. Arlington Family Offices has been assembling land in this corridor for many years. Work is set to start on a major development in downtown Franklin, known as the Margin District, a $165 million mixed-use development just south of 5 Points in Franklin is expected to break ground early next year. The development will consist of 25 luxury homes, 50,000 square feet of retail, and office space. The development will total 180,000 square feet, sitting at the corner of Margin Street and Columbia Avenue. Quote, "We've designed the development to serve as an extension of downtown Franklin, inviting residents and visitors to explore new living, shopping, dining, and working options." The homes will range from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet and each offer an outdoor terrace, 2 reserved parking spots, and on-site storage. Home prices start at $2 million. I've got some issues with some of this, right? $2 million on the low end, which means they're probably $3 million on average, and you don't get a garage. You get 2 reserved parking spaces. If I'm spending $3 million, I better get a garage, and it better be a big garage. It better be 4 or 5 car garage. Don't tell me I'm getting 2 reserved parking spaces and some type of storage unit. That's what they do in Florida, right? In these condo buildings, you get reserved parking spaces, and then nearby in the parking garage, you get a few closets to shove stuff in. For $3 million in Franklin, I want more than 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. I want more than 2 reserved parking spaces, and I hate the idea of storage garages near my parking. So they've got a lot of money invested in these parcels that they've been assembling over the last 4 years. I wish them well. They must be targeting perhaps an older, childless demographic. But we'll see how it plays out for them. It's going to be cool. I'm not participating in it. It's going to be very cool. It's going to be much more attractive than that stretch of downtown, which is real dilapidated and old, and it needed it, right? So I wish them well. Last story, a new banking business plan. For community banks to have a chance at staying relevant in the market, it's going to take a new approach called embedded banking. I bet you haven't heard that expression. Thread Bank is a Brentwood-based bank, formerly known as Civis Bank. The community bank located in Rogersville, Tennessee, was recapitalized in May 2021 by a group of investors and private equity firms with the aim of creating a new model when it comes to community banking. Our mission is to take traditional banking products and services, but deliver them through technology into partners where we can access their networks. The way this works is the bank partners with software as a service companies or brands like big box retailers to provide services to a defined customer base. A customer who requests to open a credit card or a deposit account at that partner location then becomes a direct customer of the bank. From there, Thread can offer those clients a variety of banking services like checking and savings accounts, debit cards, bill pay, and more. Traditional banks are going to have relationship managers, loan officers, deposit officers, customer service representatives, and tellers. All this infrastructure in their bank when you walk in. We don't have any of that. The partner is all of that wrapped into one. At the time that they acquired this bank, Civis Bank, the bank only had $100 million in assets, which is very low for a bank. Today, the bank has a little over $700 million in assets. They recently signed a lease to be the anchor tenant in a new Wedgwood, Houston office building called The Pitch, moving its corporate office from Brentwood. The trend remains the same. Banks will continue to consolidate. What they're saying is it's very difficult for a community bank to compete in our world today, and that's why there's so much consolidation. In fact, from over 15,000 banks several decades ago, we are now under 5,000 total banks today. So very interesting. I love a business plan that has low overhead, is creative, has a competitive advantage, a point of differentiation. And this bank has all of that. These are very smart people with a decent amount of money behind them, really trying to create a bank where they have no competition and where they don't have to have a high overhead in an effort to get customers in the door, because they are going to be providing these services from afar to an established customer base that someone else has to do the work to earn, right? So someone else earns the customer's trust, and they just slide in and take advantage of their banking services as the situation allows. So very creative, very entrepreneurial approach. Just like we discussed with community banks kind of consolidating, they can't compete, they weren't entrepreneurial enough, they just get gobbled up by the big boys. Thread Bank is the opposite of that. They're really trying to carve out their own niche, and I think that is a very impressive thing to do. So that rounds out our show. Those are the top 10 stories of the week, brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, the best commercial real estate broker in Nashville and the Southeast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have another show for you next week. We'll talk to you then.